What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick.
And my name is Dave.
And this is The Deep Dive. And we are starting a brand new series called Real Faith.
Yep.
And this week we looked at the movie Remember the Titans and
awesome
busted
movie.
it down.
We did. It was awesome.
Yeah, are you ready to get into this?
I'm so ready.
Because Remember the Titans is literally one of my favorite movies.
Me too. Yeah, let's talk about it.
All right, let's go. Well, before we get too far into this, Dave, we had a great Memorial Day weekend around here.
We certainly did. It was a fantastic day at Hickory Flat.
Yeah, there was a good service, good music,
Had
good
a
preaching.
Luncheon afterwards,
Yeah.
and then the water day, slip and slide kickoff for the summer,
Which was
awesome day.
buck wild.
It was crazy.
I made the announcement during the dinner or during the lunch, and I said, hey, we'll start at 12 outside, and about 11:45, somebody comes and whispers in my ear. They're like, there's people already out there. And I'm like, oh no, there's no adult out there. So, I finished my last bit of food, whatever it was, and I walk out there, and I'd already filled up like 300 water balloons to prep for a game, and they were just being launched everywhere. I think by the time I got up there were 15 balloons total. It was fun, but
I want to say you and Rachel, and I know you all had volunteers helping you, did an incredible job because it was just a great afternoon, and people just kind of stayed around and talked, and the kids played. It was marvelous.
And that's really, I'm not going to take any credit except for like maybe setup. Rachel, this was all kind of Rachel's idea, and that's what she wanted. She just wanted to create a vibe where people just kind of sat and hung out. The kids got to go have some fun, and if the adults were brave enough that they could jump up there and have a good time as well. There actually were about 5 or 6 adults that went through the slides and stuff themselves. And
I would have if I had shorts on.
You could have done it in jeans.
Yeah,
it'd have been fun.
Yeah, but anyway, let's get into this movie. And I will say that doing a movie based series, I didn't know exactly how it would go. I've done it in the past.
Right.
It's been a while. I didn't do it in my last church, but the church before that, I did it a bunch, and they liked it there. And I wondered how Hickory Flat would react, and everybody seemed to really enjoy it and love it.
Everything I saw, was they were excited about it. Some people, were like, hey, I watched the movie after the service and stuff like that. So that's what you want.
Yeah. So let me just give a synopsis of the movie. If you haven't seen it, I hope you have. I hope you will go and see it. I can also say, watch this service on either on our website or on Facebook. We're having a little bit of time with the rights to stream. It's perfectly legal by the fair usage date for me to do it live in person. But we're trying to work through the copyright and the rights because we want to make sure we're all copacetic and kosher and all those things. But if you haven't seen it, take a look at it. But it's about a true story that happened in Virginia back in I think in the early 70s, and it was during a time of integration of two schools. And it was a lot of difficulties, a lot of social issues that were going on around there. And so these two schools, these two football coaches found themselves put in this position of having to make a team from this group of guys that were trying to overcome their differences. And it's just an amazing, inspiring story. And I'll give you one other little side on it. Roger Jones and Nancy Jones grew up in that community. Roger went to the school they played for the state championship. And I may have this wrong, but I think Nancy might have gone to the school, T.C. Williams, which was the school that he was based at. And so they had some great insights. They knew all about it. They were a little bit older than when this happened, but they certainly knew about the championships there and the tradition of football. And I asked them, well, how much of this was Hollywood? Was it really on the last play, when they won the championship and all of that? And that was all true. And it was on a trick play like they did. And so,
cool.
Hollywood got a lot of it right. It sounds like even, as far as inspiring us, they got us completely right. But even I think historically, it was pretty accurate from what I understand from Roger.
Yeah. Did you know that actually one of the scenes, I forgot which football game it was, but one of them was actually filmed at Etowah High School here.
Yeah, I knew
here
that,
in the county.
and a lot of the college scenes were at Berry College in Rome.
Yeah, that's
so
pretty
a lot
cool.
of it was filmed in Georgia. So it was great.
What a great movie, and you talked about it, and you kind of found a few points out of some of these clips that you told that we kind of got the band hammer for showing a little bit, but. Why don't you talk us through one of them?
Okay. Well,
let's kind of just go through
one
them.
of the things I think is important is that these two guys, the football coach, Coach Yost and Coach Boone, were football coaches. That's who they were. They loved football. They had lots of success in it. Suddenly, they find themselves in a moment in time when they have to be leaders. They did not sign up, I think, to be like social justice warriors and all of that, but they found themselves having to stand up and take leadership. And
I like how the movie kind of even portrays it is when Coach Boone moves into his neighborhood, and one of the first things that happens is that brick comes through the window.
Well, yeah. I mean, that, but also he wasn't going to take the head coach job because he didn't think it was fair to Coach Yost, who was there before him. But then the African American community came out, and he saw how much it meant to them, that it was really bigger than just him, what it represented.
Right.
And Coach Yost wasn't going to stay because he wanted to be a head football coach, but he realized that it was bigger than just him because all the white people and all the white players said they were going to boycott. And he realized, and so the example I used in my mind as I was rewatching the movie immediately went to was Esther. And Esther was this Old Testament biblical story. She was queen. She ethnically was Jewish, although I'm not sure that the king knew that. But there was this plot to kill all the Jews, and she found out about it. And so she goes to her uncle Mordecai and asks him, what should I do? And he said, well, if you don't do anything, you and all your family are going to die. But maybe God put you here for a moment like this. And I look at these two men, and it was for that moment that they stood up and were heroic. I use the word decided to be the adults in the room because the adults weren't being very adult. They were being, very divisive, outwardly racist in ways. And they decided to be bigger than that, to be the leaders, to put their own personal injury and, having a brick thrown through your window and having people, say all sorts of things about you.
Yeah.
And they put all that aside for that moment in time to be the leaders and to make a difference in that community.
Yeah, I think it's in the movie, it's such a cool thing to watch them kind of progressively get together, even to a point where they were having dinner at each other's houses and develop that relationship. But even kind of in our own lives, to kind of bring it down to a personal level is sometimes there's spaces where we're called to be the bigger man in the room or just even called to just step above what it's expected out of us. And it can be it doesn't have to be in massive situations as these movies portray or as the Bible portrays through Esther. Like sometimes it's just, I need to speak something into this person's life and I need to do it now. Like I don't know if, you kind of feel those like, whispers at the back of your head's like, you got to say something now, or you got to talk to this person now. You know what I mean? Like
there is a moment like this where we're called upon. And a lot of the times in normal life, it can be a daily thing where, we're called to put self aside and to stand up and lead or stand up and be a Christian. But there are times, and in the times we are living, I think it's a moment like this for we, the church, for we Christians to stand up and be leaders and said, enough is enough with all the division in our country.
Yeah.
And we're just coming through all the horrific things of last week and the shooting out in Texas and that school and the loss of those children's lives and those two teachers' lives. And it's just been so disappointing to see people retreat immediately into their political, ideological corners and start yelling at each other and start vilifying the other when, first of all, we need to give a space of grace for those people to grieve and that, but also that these, sort of binary one issue, it's a much, much more complicated thing than just one thing.
Yeah.
Whether, whatever your thing might be, sometimes you have to look beyond that, see the big picture, and realize we are not, by hating one another, by yelling at one another, by vilifying the other side, there is never going to be any progress made. And so it's a moment like these for a lot of us now.
Yeah, I think you said it really well, especially about the timing. Is that I think I found out what had happened, like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then, by the time I got on Facebook to kind of just check around, you're right. Like, people were already they had drawn their swords and standing on the sides, but when you ask them about really doing something about it, it's all talk, And I'm not saying that we should start this war or anything about this, but I think it's quite interesting that you were using situations with people's lives and just saying, hey, this is my time to tell you my political opinion. It's like, come on, I don't need to see the gun post right away, or I don't need to see the anti-gun post right away. Like, just let's grieve this for a moment, because 20 kids just lost their lives. That's
right.
Terrible. You know what I mean?
Let's give a second of grace to that community. And yes, there needs to be a postmortem on all of that. It does. We need to figure out and once and for all start trying to build to make it a better world. But we don't give ourselves the grace to do that and to look at the multifaceted issue that it is. It's just like in this particular movie, they're dealing with racism and integration and all of that. And it's not just about one thing. It's a very complicated subject, and we're still dealing with it today. But having these one sentence that will fit on neatly on a bumper sticker that may be your thing, that doesn't solve anything.
No. By the way, your Facebook post not going to solve anything.
0%. 0%.
Yeah,
just gonna make it worse.
And let's be honest. If you really cared about something getting done, you would do kind of like what Coach Yost and Coach Boone did, and they left their sides. Not to say that they were hating necessarily, and they met in the middle and said, "Here's where we can actually do something with this and about it, and find our spaces of commonality, our space of relationship, and let's work through it here as opposed to over here."
And they had football and winning football games is something to be a unifier for them to put other people opinions and their own opinions aside to work towards that, and along the way they might just learn something. But a real pivotal scene, which is also just so timely, was the Gettysburg scene. They went to football camp where the teams go off for, at that point, I guess it was 2 weeks. I don't know if summers are that long for public schools anymore, but they had 2 weeks. They go off to Gettysburg College, which is right next to the Gettysburg, where the bloodiest battle ever fought was. And they had that early morning run, and just that incredible speech by Denzel Washington, where he says, do you know where we are? 50,000 people died here, shed their blood, fighting the same war we're still fighting today. And, I actually wrote this down to make sure I got it right. I killed my brother with malice in my heart. Hatred destroyed my family. And, hatred is destroying our country, our culture, vilifying the other, not trying to see the other person as a human being and hear the other person's heart. And he says, listen, take a lesson from the dead. Yeah. Take a lesson from the dead. And we need to do that and look like we can't keep making the same mistakes over and over. And he says, you don't have to like each other, but you will respect each other. And I wish, as I said in the service, I wish people could make that speech to our Congress. You may philosophically disagree with everything on the other side has, but you can respect and be civil. And who knows, if you have a relationship with somebody, you might just change. And maybe you won't, but at least you will know the other person's side and heart and see them as a human being and not something, to be, throw stones at.
Yeah.
So that to me is just such a powerful scene.
It is a powerful scene. And I think one of the things you pull out of it, and I think you were saying it pretty well, is that when we talk about hatred, nothing's ever going to come out of hatred. Like it just automatically turns your nose, turns your face to somebody or something or whatever. And when God says that his message is about loving our neighbor, love people, this is a very contradicting statement. This is countercultural, especially in our time. And I even feel like I'm only 37 and I feel like I've seen divisiveness over every issue at an all-time high. And it's like belligerence, like it can even be simple things like, whether you thought Game of Thrones was a good TV show or whatever. And people are like, no, I hated it. People are like, no, I love it. And it's just like this battle of who's right as opposed to finding the real answers, I guess. And I think that's the thing I personally have a hard time with. You were talking about Congress, and it's like people seem like they're fighting more to keep their power than they are to help solve issues, and I don't know what the underlying, you could talk mental health in this case, you could talk guns, you could talk, like there's probably a lot of it, but like let's get started on working through it as opposed to just every time something happens, let's say a little word about it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
There's this, and maybe people watching this or listening today have seen this, but Andy Stanley, a pastor here in Atlanta, spoke to the Georgia House and both challenged them and talked about, I'll put in these words, setting up straw men that are easy to blow over from your side just to get your contingency all riled up and mad about something is a terrible way to lead. They're terrible leaders. It raises money. It gets people angry and fired up, but it is a terrible way to lead. It's much harder to go into the middle and say, look, there may be some points on both sides we need to talk. It's not all 100% right, 100% wrong. There's some way that we can meet in the middle. Yeah. And, we see that with Coach Yost and Coach Boone. And, you can't solve the problems of racism in an hour and 45-minute movie or one sermon or one podcast. But we can start taking steps, to love. We had a conversation at lunch today and about anger and hatred and all that. And we, on the way back over here, I was thinking, have I ever been in a situation where I've been really angry about said something to somebody and I'm happy about the way that turned out? And I could not think of one. There might be, Jesus got angry, but I'm not Jesus. Neither none of us are Jesus. No. So it's to try to find a way of loving, putting self aside, and taking a breath and loving is a much more productive way for us to make progress in whatever situation we're in.
Yeah,
relationship.
Especially when we're talking about hatred, that does not build unity. It does not build collaboration. It does not build efforts that work together. Because I think you would agree, and I think one of your points from the sermon yesterday used another clip that I'll let you talk about, but it was essentially the idea that relationships matter, and having a relationship with somebody and being close to them often will supersede whatever issue is going on. You know what I mean? Can you speak to the scene that you were talking about? So you
had two plots that were going on, two stories that are really running parallel. You had Coach Yost and Coach Boone, but you also had Gary and Julian, who one was a white player, one was a black player, and they were sort of the leaders on the teams, and they were roommates at this camp, and they hated each other, and they got into a fight right away, but over time, they became best friends. They became the leaders on the teams. They listened to each other. And there's a terrible accident where Gary is paralyzed, and the only person he wants to see is Julian. And he goes in, and the nurse immediately says, "Hey, only family." And she says, "Are you blind? Don't you see the resemblance? This is my brother."
Yeah.
And that's an amazing thing when we get to know somebody else who's different in whatever difference that we might have. And we all have differences.
Yeah.
Even with the same race or same ethnicity, we all have differences. But particularly when it comes to something where we've been taught to fear, question, demonize, whatever the other side, when we can sit down and have a relationship and say, hey, we're pretty much alike. In fact, I like this person.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful scene. I think of, back at my last appointment, there was a man out in the a community who was Muslim, and we got to know each other through Leadership Rockdale. His name was Ahmed, and we became brothers.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from him about love and about leadership, and just I remember one time we went into this restaurant. It was kind of this meet and three place, and so the two of us walked in, and the entire place got quiet and turned around and looked, because he's Middle Eastern, and
Right.
it's just like these people been taught to fear, oh, is he going to be a terrorist and blow up stuff? And, and he had learned to, it still, I think, angered him, but he had learned to rise above that. And if you got to know him, you discovered how patriotic he was. He loved America
Right.
because he saw what the opportunities he had for his country. And he would have little kids, the Walk of Heroes that we had out in Conyers on patriotic days like 4th of July or whatever. He would have little kids from his mosque there giving out water, and it changed a lot of hearts because, people began to see people differently.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it takes. And I don't, if it's race, ethnicity, religion, LGBTQ issues, which is a big thing in our church now. When you get to know the other person and see them as a person, it changes your hearts and sometimes can change your mind and your perspective on things.
Yeah, because it seems like a lot of times we use our preconceived notions to define how we're going to have a relationship with people.
Yeah.
What's the old saying? You can't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
And I think you're kind of speaking to that almost a little bit. Is that there's so much more intrinsic value than what their religion is or their race or ethnicity or anything like that, that we have to give people, and we have to make space for those people in our lives to be able to speak. Finding a brother, you could have just as easily been one of those people in the restaurant, but you decided to take the step and say, I would like to get to know you, whether it was he said something at one of these meetings you were jointly a part of, or
Nick, I'm going to confess something right now.
Yeah.
No, I would have never admitted that I was that way.
Yeah.
But there, just because of the race and the culture that I would look at a person and make a judgment, and I'm still do. We all have got those
have some of that.
blind spots. But we look at people with the preconceived judgment.
Yeah.
And it's on us to try to cut through that. And I know we're getting a little long with this, but I do want to end with this. Yesterday was a great day in service.
Yeah.
And we ended with the song "Ain't No Mountain High Enough," and just great. John and Beth did a great job singing. Everybody was singing along. And what I remind the congregation, I want to remind us, is that when we are feeling good and positive and in a good headspace, is when to make the decision that there isn't any mountain high enough or valley low enough, that if we're going to love one another and be brothers for one another, that we're going to get through things, because there are bad days that are going to come. There are disagreements that are going to be there. There's going to be times when we even get angry about something somebody else said, but we've got to now decide there isn't any mountain we can't get over. There isn't any valley. That love will win. Yeah. Love will get us through.
Yeah, man. Well, that's so powerful. It goes great with the movie. So well done on the thematic planning there. But because that was one of the main songs of the movie, and that was honestly probably one of the most unifying scenes in the movie, of watching the team come together to sing that song together.
Turning point,
which I love. I love that part personally. But as we think about it in that space, there's no mountain high enough, no valley low to keep us from getting to God, getting to a relationship, getting to love. Man, that's so cool.
Right.
Well, what movie are we doing this next week?
We're
Dave?
doing The Lion King, which is actually older than Remember the Titans, but it's still very much, a story that's out there. I've seen the animated movie. I've seen the Broadway show here in
so
Atlanta
good.
and in New York. Teresa and I saw it in New York. And most recently saw it's not live action because it's done with CGI, but it looks real. It looks like
Right.
real lines and stuff. We just watched that, and it's stunningly beautiful. And it's a timeless story.
It really
and
is.
it cuts through in so many biblical themes. We're going to have fun with that one too.
Are you using the luau skit? We're Timon and Pumbaa. They dance the luau.
Oh, Hakuna Matata thing?
No. We'll get it.
Tell me later.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Hakuna Matata will
Well,
show
it
up
has
in
to
the-
make a
yeah,
pop
it's-
spot.
Yeah,
And if
it'll-
it doesn't, I'll be really upset.
Yeah.
So wear all your Lion King Disney gear if you've got it.
Well, we're red for Pentecost because it's
Oh.
Pentecost too.
Oh,
it's
that's
Pentecost
right.
Sunday, so we're going to be celebrating that, and it actually kind of gets into the Lion King, just like Memorial Day. We saw that in Remember the Titans. The Lion King and Pentecost go together well. So
Cool.
That's
Very
all
cool.
Sunday.
Awesome. Well, guys, as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, however you take us in. We're just so thankful that you guys keep coming back, and we want you to be a part of it. So if you have any conversation pieces, anything you'd like to add, you can either bring it up to us individually. You can post it down in the comments of the YouTube or Facebook, or send us an email at deepdive@hickory5.org. We'd love to just be with you and talk to you through some of this, talk with you about it. And because we touched on some pretty
Heavy stuff.
heavy
Yeah.
stuff today.
Yeah.
So, but it's good stuff, very good stuff. And, but we appreciate you again. And Dave, you got anything else to add?
Nope. Just God bless. Have a good week.
That's right. Have a good weekend, guys. We'll catch you next time.